Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth monthly forecast for May 2025. Your ruler Saturn is on the move. On the 25th of this month, moving into the sign of Aries, which is the first zodiac sign. Yours is the 10th. The 10th house energy of your ruler Saturn is about culmination. It's about when things reach a point where there is a structure in place. We have got something that's more established. We've got some methodology, whereas the position of Saturn in Aries is the start of a new journey. And that new journey for you is very much about where you live. Your sense of security can be to do with family relationships, but also to do with your inner world and your relationship to it. So Saturn's arrival comes on the back of Neptune moving at the end of March into Aries, and Venus returns to the sign on the first day of this month. And the lovely thing about Venus's combination with Neptune, the first in our lifetimes, through the first week of this month, is if you'd like to change things decoratively at home, you could do something that's really quite special. Your use of colours, the imagination, the fabrics you choose, whatever you're considering around your home, something could be very lovely indeed. Unfortunately, Neptune can be around illusion too. If there has been someone you've been grappling to get some form of communication working with through the month of April, because Saturn was crunching Venus for the whole of the month and exactly on two occasions, you could enter this month feeling a little bit unsure, perhaps even a little disenchanted, because your sensitivity is going to be that much higher. The Sun actually starts this month in a very bubbly, effervescent location, but with Mercury also, like Venus and Neptune, in your fourth house, that can see you feeling a little more inward. Or at least if you do socialise, wanting to be with people you know well, or visit places that you're particularly comfortable and at ease within. But that combination of Venus and Neptune makes way for a connection between Pluto in your second house and Venus. Because Venus can be about money, if you wanted to cash in, perhaps sell a property that no longer fits your needs, or to release property that you no longer need, because Pluto can be about where we let go, you may want to let go of something that creates more security. So that could be in some ways having something in the here and now, and that could mean that you make a call on a big financial matter. But also it could mean that someone in your family is actually very generous and thoughtful and supportive. So for example, if you're trying to rent a flat or buy a property, it may be that a family member can in some ways help to make that process come together. But on the 4th, Pluto goes into its annual 5-month retrograde. And what Pluto is going to ask you to do over the years now, through to 244, is really get much more au fait with what your values are, what's really important to you. Now, obviously, finance can be part of that. You're a very practical, pragmatic sign, but equally, it's what's important to us in terms of our beliefs. So the second house can be what we value personally, and also it's how we value ourselves. If that is a little bit tentative with you, through the next 5 months, that may be an area that you do need to work harder on. But on the 5th, Venus moves forwards, comes out of its post-retrograde shadow, and if you have gone through a bit of a journey when it comes to a relationship matter, because of Venus's retrograde, you will start to get fresh air and clarity on where things stand. But on the 10th, Mercury joins up with the Sun in your 5th house. And I have to be honest, Mercury in the 5th house is one of its better positions. It can be very charismatic, very playful, perhaps even a bit mischievous. So your sense of humour could be revived. But if you recall, in the middle of April, from the 18th, Mars, the planet of drive and passion and desire, moved into the part of your chart to do with long-term finances, but also potentially intimacy. But it faced off with Pluto in the 2nd house. Maybe you encountered some kind of tussle. Maybe you were attracted to someone and didn't quite understand why. It may have been someone you didn't even like. Then again, you may have felt unsure about how to work forwards around a financial matter, or particularly shared finance. But with Mercury intercepting the two of them in a T-square, you could feel actually a little bit more carefree when it comes to finance, and may decide that it's time for some kind of treat. The 2nd house of Pluto and the 5th house of Mercury can be to do with speculation. But just beware that Uranus is in that 5th house, has been full-time since March 2019, and of course the Sun. And although Venus moves forwards and starts to align fantastically well with Mars from the 11th through to the end of the month, which means if you are looking for property or you are wanting to make some shrewd financial moves with the resources you've got, there's a great chance you can. That peaks the angle between them on the 22nd. But it could also mean that you're drawn to someone in a romantic context that you actually feel very comfortable with. I feel modern society is very much based on appearance, isn't it? It's very much based on how people dress, how they appear. But the best relationships are where we have that spark, but also there's the emotional connection too. And Venus and Mars can tease that into the open for you as this month goes on. However, on the 12th, the full moon in Scorpio is the part of your chart to do with where you connect to people. Whereas the Sun and also Mercury and Uranus are in the part of your chart that's to do with what you want, the individual. If you feel that something is bogging you down, maybe it's a friend who just wants to dominate your time somewhat, maybe it's an interest that's taking you away from what you need to do for you completely individually. Maybe there's something that fascinates you, but you're not sure whether you've quite got the confidence to go with it. That full moon is asking you to make some big judgment calls. But what Uranus can do is push you to leave your comfort zone. And because you're a sign that does often put material security first, sometimes you will stick with relationships or situations that aren't really feeding your soul quite as much as they should. And if that is an issue, the link between Venus and Mars can make you much more conscious of what is important to you. And that's why Venus aligning with Pluto at the start of the month and Pluto's retrograde are so critical, because it's all about getting more in touch with what's authentically right for your key values and the foundations of your world, not settling essentially. So Uranus can push you to be a bit more provocative in your approach. Now Mercury moves forwards and links up with Uranus too from the 23rd to the 26th, but there's a much more practical dimension to your chart in the last 10 days of this month. And that's because the Sun moves into Gemini on the 20th, Saturn moves into your 4th house on the 25th, as I mentioned before, but Mercury joins up with the Sun on the 26th. They both angle back to Saturn in a sextile, but they angle back to Pluto in a trine. So when it comes to your values, your sense of security, Aries energy, but also the practicalities of life, the Gemini energy towards the end of this month, maybe there are some fine tunings that you can make to actually get things in better alignment. The new moon certainly can see you thinking about your work, for example. From the 27th, the backdrop energy for the next month means that even if you do make a number of small adjustments, it could be quite significant. Maybe it's working a slightly different schedule, maybe spending some time working from home. Maybe it's considering self-employment. Maybe it's about providing services. Maybe it's about getting a bit more organised, because even if you're someone who has got a lot of life worked out, there may still be some areas of refinement and improvement to make your situation that much more metronomic. Maybe it's some improvements around your diet or exercise routine. All this virtue is very much to the fore for you in terms of your thinking and discussion, Gemini, but the outcome needs to give you something tangible. And that's really what Saturn's going to be pushing you to do through to the end of August. It wants you to make your home emotional world workable, and if something isn't quite working, it needs to be looked at, and that needs to be an area where you pour your attention. The month ends with a Mercury Cazimi, the 6th house. So even though the host is Gemini, the 6th house is Mercury's influence over the sign of Virgo, precision, where we're more analytical. So your attention to detail towards the end of this month can be a revelation, whether it's looking at the labels on foods, whether it's becoming a little bit more conscious of your sleep, whether you're more conscious of who has a good energetic exchange with you. Sometimes the people that we like a lot and can be great fun may in some ways might not necessarily be who we want to be with all the time, because there are some parts of life that need to be where we're looking after our own situation. So the 6th house is where perhaps it's good to be of service to people, but most of all we need to be of service to ourselves. So getting things a bit more in trim is going to be very, very much part of the story as this month draws to an end. So there can be some exciting and interactive and playful and perhaps unpredictable elements socially or romantically at the heart of this month, but I feel that gathering of energy, particularly Saturn and Neptune in your 4th house, aligning with Pluto, is asking you to get much more clear about what you really value, but much more clear about your value and where you will be stronger about not giving away your time, affection and energy to people who may not necessarily reciprocate, not in a sinister way, because by the end of the month you're being asked to purify your situation in the best way you possibly can. Have a great month, Capricorn. Take care and goodbye. Remember to check out my new website, please, at www.patrickarundel.com. You can get your free natal horoscope. It's absolutely brilliant. The big three, the ascendant, sun and the moon, but also you can find out exactly where your other planets are, the signs they're in, the houses they're in, and critically the relationships between them. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope. Please see below for more.